Hi guys, it's James here, finally back again for a new video. And I had a few that I had on the go prior to the last one I did, which was the top 10 Westworld episodes, maybe like 2-3 months ago. And I just hadn't found the time to get these together, but I finally have some that I can do, and with a new setup that I have here out in the man cave, where I can do these again. So if you clicked on it, then you know that this one is the top 10 Google Play films part 3. And in the time from starting to make a lot of these lists, recent lists, and today, I actually accumulated several more Google Play films that would make this list. There's still one or two that I would leave off. One because it wasn't that good. Another because I'm still saving it for another list. I'm hoping to do about superhero films because it's more of a superhero edge. Anyway, so without further ado, number 10. Number 10, we have a film called Copshop from last year. And this is a Joe Carnahan film, and I believe it was one of two he did last year. And one of them was Boss Level, which I had on a previous Google Play Films list, and the other was Copshop, but it was early in the year, later in the year. And I didn't see Copshop until, well, it came out in theaters, but it didn't get a lot of attention. And when I saw it, I thought it was great. Not one of his best films, but still, you can tell it's a Joe Carnahan film, and that means it's great, in my opinion. And so I picked it up off Google Play, and I thought it was great. You got Frank Grillo in there, who's worked with him in the out front in Boss Level, but he was a supporting guy in The Grey. In this one, he's a contract killer, and he's going after Gerard Butler's character, who's in prison, or being held in prison, of the local jail. And who I thought was the standout in this movie was Toby Huss, who plays another killer going after Gerard Butler, but he's complete psycho. But he just plays it so quirky, crazy, so he's really funny. Yeah, it's not very plot heavy, but I thought it was a pretty entertaining film. So that was Copshop. Number 9, we have a film from earlier this year. It is called Alice. And if you've seen the film Antebellum from, I believe it was from last year, this is very similar. Very similar in concept to Antebellum, but okay, I will get into. Okay, it's in the trailer, so it's not really spoiling anything, but I will say that Antebellum was a far more entertaining movie for me, but Alice was still good. Alice, you get the central character, Alice. She lives on a plantation. She's one of a group of slaves that's owned by this white guy who runs the plantation, played by Johnny Lee Miller. And she eventually runs off and escapes the plantation, runs through the woods, and ends up running onto the highway with cars zooming by. Turns out it's the 1970s. And she's picked up by a trucker coming by, played by Common. They both do great jobs, even Johnny Lee Miller, as well as the villain of the film. Now, okay, spoiler. Now, you may know this if you've seen Antebellum or from the trailer, something fishy going on. At the end of Antebellum, partway through Antebellum, you find out that the main actress in the film, who's African American, gets kidnapped and wakes up on this plantation where she has to basically be a slave to a bunch of white people. Well, she ends up escaping, and it turns out that sort of like the village where this rich senator owned a Civil War reenactment property, and on the innermost part of the property was this plantation where these white people were playing out their fantasy of being slave owners and stuff, but they were doing it with real people's lives. Now in Alice, the slaves that live on the plantation are so isolated that this has been going on for, I believe, generations. So like decades. This has been going on without any of the slaves being aware that Emancipation Proclamation happened, that slavery ended, that the modern world exists out there, because they weren't allowed to know. Anyway, it's a good film. It is a really good film, and I can't help but compare it to Antebellum, which I think is better. But they're both good films. Anyway, number 8, we have a film from last year called Antlers. Now, this one was done by Scott Cooper, who, if you don't know the name, he did the film Crazy Heart. He did Out of the Furnace with Christian Bale. Crazy Heart was Jeff Daniels, where he won the Oscar for it. He did Black Mass, fantastic true story starring Johnny Depp. He did Hostiles, another one with Christian Bale, where the Union soldiers had to escort high-value Indian chief back to his homeland so he could die where he wanted to. And this one is his most recent one, produced by Guillermo del Toro, and this one was his first horror film. But because of the pandemic, it originally was supposed to come out in, let me see, it was originally supposed to come out April 2020, and then it got rescheduled for February 2021, and then it was rescheduled for, I think, December 2021, and I believe it ended up coming out, I think it was earlier this year. Yeah, it was earlier this year. It actually came out in theaters, and then shortly thereafter on digital. And this film it's sort of another play on another take on the Wendigo mythology, where a mythical beast attacks a person, and that person basically starts turning into the Wendigo, where they have this overwhelming hunger to consume flesh and stuff like that. It's very well done, and it's a somewhat original take on the material. If you've seen like Ravenous or the movie Wendigo by I can't remember his name. An indie filmmaker. Sorry, you may recognize his name. Larry Fessenden. Anyway, and so you've got Kerry Russell. Let's see, Kerry Russell, Jesse Plemons, who's been in several Scott Cooper films. Graham Greene is in there. Scott Hayes, Rory Cochrane, who is also in Hostiles. Amy Madigan. And everyone does a great job in this film, and it's a very good-looking horror film. Everyone does a great job, especially the little kids who act in the film. Anyway, so I would recommend it. Not Scott Cooper's best film, but he's got so many good ones that it's really hard to pick a favorite. Although mine is probably either Black Mass or Hostiles. Anyway, number 7, we have a film from last year called Infinite. And this was one of the latest ones from Antoine Fuqua. And this one, I was on Google Play one day, and there it was. And it was this big budget film that went straight to streaming, straight to digital release. And it stars Mark Wahlberg, primarily Mark Wahlberg and Chiwetel Ejiofor. And it's essentially, there's 2 types of people. Well, 2 types of these special race of people. And one are called infinites, and they just live out their lives throughout history. When they die, they're reincarnated into a new body, and they keep fighting. And who they're fighting are these, I believe they're believers. Nihilists. It's the 2 classes of infinites, the believers and the nihilists. Mark Wahlberg would be a believer. Chiwetel Ejiofor is a nihilist. Nihilists are the ones who don't believe these people should reincarnate throughout their lives, and so they've developed weapons that kill them and trap their souls in these objects, and they place them on a shelf and stuff so that they can't be reborn into a new body. Sounds more complicated than it probably is, but it's a great action film, which is really what Antoine Fuqua does a great job at. So, mainly Mark Wahlberg, Chiwetel Ejiofor. Let me see, Sophie Cookson, Jason Mantzoukas is in there. Toby Jones. Yeah, it's mostly Mark Wahlberg versus Chiwetel Ejiofor. So. But it's a great action movie if you like those actors. Let's see. Number 6. We have a Canadian film from 2016 called Two Lovers and a Bear. And this one drew my attention because it stars Dane DeHaan and Tatiana Maslany. Now I loved her in Stronger, one of the true story movies about the Boston Marathon bombing. And I didn't watch Orphan Black, and I don't know about the She-Hulk TV show coming up. But the things I've seen her in, she was great. And Dane DeHaan, I think, is great in everything he does. But this essentially is just two people who are in love living up in Nunavut. And Dane DeHaan's character can apparently talk to bears, and they can talk back to him. And he has this ongoing conversation with this polar bear. And Tatiana Maslany's character, she wants to stay there with Dane DeHaan's character, but she has to leave. She wants to leave because she has a stalker who keeps following her everywhere she goes. So she has to keep moving from place to place, and he keeps showing up. And I'm leaving out some stuff that I don't want to spoil, but that's essentially the base for the plot. And it's a well-written movie. It's a beautifully shot movie, because I believe, where did they shoot this one? Iqaluit City, and some scenes were shot in Porcupine, Ontario, Northern Ontario near Timmins. So it was pretty authentically shot in terms of locations, and it's just a well-made Canadian indie movie, and a beautiful looking one. Okay. Number 5, we have a film from 2021, another Canadian action thriller called Trigger Point. And this one stars Barry Pepper and Colm Feore primarily. Now, Barry Pepper is a former special ops agent who was captured and tortured. And he eventually was released or escaped. Is it released or escaped? He's retired. and he a bunch of agents get assassinated at the beginning of the film, and he is blamed for their deaths because they claim that he broke during interrogation and gave the bad guys the information they needed, the real names of all these undercover agents. But he can't remember exactly what happened because he suffers from amnesia from the torture. And Colm Feore is his former handler, I believe. I only watched this the one time, but it is a good movie. Who comes to him and asks for his help because some people have taken his daughter hostage. So he goes after the guy's daughter to rescue her, and not everything is as it seems, and I will stop there. The only thing I wish for this film was it's sort of set up as an ongoing story that I think it was intended to be a trilogy, but I don't know if it will get a sequel or a second sequel, for that matter. It was released straight to streaming, straight to digital, and I hope it gets another film because it's good on its own, but it has that little cliffhanger, or it's left open-ended. You don't have to have a sequel, but it sets it up for one. So that was Trigger Point. All right, number 4, we have a film from, last year, a film by Paul Schrader called The Card Counter. And this one stars Oscar Isaac, primarily, but you've also got Tiffany Haddish, Ty Sheridan, and in a smaller role, Willem Dafoe. Now, this one's a fairly subdued movie, and I talked about this a bit on the Movie Madhouse podcast on one of our shows, and Oscar Isaac plays a character named William Tell, and he's a professional gambler, professional poker player, and he stays very under the radar. And Ty Sheridan recognizes him at a poker tournament and approaches him because he saw pictures of him because he knows that Oscar Isaac served with Ty Sheridan's father in the military. Well, Oscar Isaac, William Tell, doesn't want to be recognized, doesn't want to be put out front, but he has to deal with this kid who wants to get to know him, wants to learn from him. Now, Oscar Isaac is, I think, sort of like, he has, not like an agent or whatever, he works with Tiffany Haddish, who sort of arranges all these games that he gets into. And the movie, as I said, is very dramatic, very subdued, until one scene, maybe like 3/4 of the way of the movie, and it turns on a dime. And I said that exact phrase. This movie turns on a dime. And you're just like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? So, and I credit it to Oscar Isaac's, well, Paul Schrader's writing, because I believe he wrote and directed this one, but also to Oscar Isaac's acting. Yeah. So, The Card Counter. Highly recommend this. Now, number 3, we have a film from 2013, a film by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who, if you don't know that name, he's a French director who's done movie Very Long Engagement. I believe he did the film Micmacs. Most notably, probably he did Alien Resurrection. But this was one he did about 9 years ago. And it's a film called The Young and Prodigious T.S. Spivet. Now, I was curious about the name, and then I watched the trailer, and then watched it. This movie is fantastic. It is a fantastic, sort of dramatic, funny, coming-of-age film. And it primarily stars this kid named... Kyle Catlett. And he plays T.S. Spivet, and his father is played by Callum Keith Rennie. Awesome. His mom is Helena Bonham Carter. Judy Davis is in this film. Rick Mercer has a cameo, and so does Julian Richings. And basically, this kid, at a year ago, his twin brother died, and he has an older sister, and he has his parents, and his life really hasn't been the same since his brother died. And he's a boy genius, sort of like Good Will Hunting and other films, where he's a little kid, but he's just a genius. And he invents this perpetual motion machine that he submits to a magazine in the Smithsonian, and they contact him. He pretends to be his dad on the phone, and he gets invited to an awards ceremony to make a speech and accept an award. Well, he's a little kid, and his parents aren't going to let him go, so he hitchhikes across the country to get there. And a lot of the movie is his adventures that he gets into on the way. And it's just super charming and it's very emotional speech that the kid gives at the award ceremony towards the end. And oh man, it's just so good. Like, Helena Bonham Carter is very quirky in it. Callum Keith Rennie is playing it very serious for the most part. Sorry. And it's just fantastic across the board. So that's The Young and Prodigious T.S. Spivet. Okay, number 2, we have a film from, it says 2020, but it was released last year, called The Night House. Now, this was released in theaters around the time of, well, it was at Galaxy around the same time as Malignant. But I think Malignant, which was the latest James Wan film, kind of overshadowed it. Excuse me, not by much, but it overshadowed it because it was a more well-known film. And I didn't go see it. I didn't go see The Night House, and it just kind of came and went. And then after it had left, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to watch the trailer because it popped up on Google Play. I'm like, holy shit, this movie looks awesome. And while it wasn't exactly the way the trailer portrayed it, it was a movie where I finished watching it. I finished watching it, and I wanted to learn more. And I had to watch. I didn't have to, but I wanted to watch some explanation videos because there were some questions I had about the movie. And so I understand the movie, and I showed it to my girlfriend. She loved it, or I think she liked it. And I answered any questions she had about it. And it stars Rebecca Hall primarily, and you won't really recognize the other actors in it, but it's basically, there's a woman and she's trying to get over her husband's recent suicide. Her husband committed suicide, stripped down, got into a boat at their lake house, sailed out into the middle of the lake, and shot himself with a gun that she didn't know he owned. And he left a note saying, "You were right, nothing is after you, you're safe now." And that was it. And so she's been kind of tormented by that. And she starts experiencing, she thinks they're hallucinations, but it feels like her house is kind of haunted, that her husband is trying to contact her from beyond the grave. Ooh. And while walking through the woods, she finds a copy, like a replica of their house, but it's built in the opposite, like things are on the wrong sides. And it's basically the house is a mirror, the lake house is mirror image of theirs. And she wonders, why the hell was my husband building this before he died? And yeah, if you pay attention, watch the movie a few times, your questions will be answered. but the Found Flicks, I think, who does a lot of the explanation videos for movies, does a great job. So that is The Night House. Now, number 1, no big surprise out of the ones I watched. Hands down the best one I saw out of these 10. And possibly one of the best I saw out of all 3 of these top 10 Google Play videos. And it is a film from last year, and it is called Pig. And this is far and away probably the best acting of Nicolas Cage's career, in my opinion. And I heard some people describe this as kind of John Wick-ish, but without a lot of the violence, or almost any of the violence. He's living out in the middle of the woods with this pig, and it's a truffle pig, so it finds and digs up truffles for him. He sells these truffles to restaurants, like ritzy restaurants in the city, and makes money to survive out in the woods. Now, it turns out he was a very famous, high-profile chef in the city, and just 10 years ago, his wife died, and he basically left all that behind, got off the grid, and lives a solitary life. He's got this long, bushy beard and stuff. And you've got Alex Wolff in the movie, you have Adam Arkin, and it's just beautiful from beginning to end. And there's some great cooking scenes, some fantastic monologues. There's a scene with underground fighting where these people pay to beat up chefs, which made zero sense to me, but somehow it was integral in Nick Cage's character on his journey, because someone kidnaps his truffle pig, knocks him unconscious, kidnaps the truffle pig, and that's what kicks off the whole story. He's come into town to find his pig. But the underground fighting thing doesn't make sense to me, but that's about it. The rest of the movie is fantastic. Beyond fantastic. Yeah, so I can't recommend Pig enough. I gotta get my girlfriend to watch it. So that will conclude this video. So I apologize for taking so long to make another one. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed watching the movies, and I hope you enjoyed watching them too. And I will see you on the next one, hopefully not too long from now. So, toodles.